So I'll get started. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our Genocide Amendment briefing. I'm Jaya, I'm co-executive director of Yet Again, and I'm also co-chairing the student wing of Stop Uyghur Genocide called Students for Uyghurs, alongside Eve. My other two co-executive directors at Yet Again are Kirsty and Joe. Joe will also be speaking. And really this will be an opportunity for you to really find out more about the Genocide Amendment and what it will do and why it's really important. And we're also really honoured that Burst the Bubble are co-hosting this with us. They have been absolutely fantastic on this campaign. So thank you to all of the Burst the Bubble team. To kind of let Michael and Joe get started, I'll briefly introduce them. Michael Polak is a barrister practising in human rights, criminal and international law at Church Court Chambers. Michael is a director at Justice Abroad, which helps people who need assistance dealing with legal proceedings overseas. Michael is also on the advisory committee of the World Uyghur Congress London office and undertakes work for the World Uyghur Congress and Uyghurs and their families who have been subject to disappearance or arbitrary detention. Joe Collins is co-executive director of Yet Again, a youth-led initiative raising awareness of modern atrocity and is working on the Stop Uyghur Genocide campaign alongside Michael. Joe is currently undertaking a Masters in Law, having completed his undergraduate degree at the University of York. Joe's undergraduate dissertation critically reviewed the crime of genocide. Joe combines his passion for genocide prevention and international criminal law to provide insights into what must change for modern atrocity to be adequately challenged. Before we start, just to let you know, we will be recording this event. So if you ask a question and you don't want to be seen, if you could just shut your camera. But other than that, we will be recording. So Eve, I'll let you take it away.
Hello everyone, hello Joe and Michael, thank you for joining us. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, you can always message me or Jaya and we'll ask it for you. But to start everything off, Michael, I'll turn to you and ask, could you briefly summarise what the situation is like in the Uyghur region at the moment and what circumstances and predicaments do Uyghur Muslims face?
Michael, you're on mute.
I'm not now. Thank you very much for having me, and it's great to speak with you again. And thank you for all the fantastic work you're doing with getting young people interested in this issue, and also to the young people who are interested in becoming activists. It's very important that we have you along. So thank you and welcome today. What's happening to the Uyghurs is absolutely terrible, and I could speak to the group for hours tonight about different international crimes which are happening against them and the other Turkish people in the region as well. The Uyghurs are the biggest group who are being oppressed terribly. There's also Kazakhs and Uzbeks and Hui as well, all Muslim people in that area who are being repressed, put in camps and that kind of thing. So when we'll talk mostly about the Uyghurs, but that's simply because they're the biggest group who are being repressed. The Uzbeks and Kazakhs really get the same kind of treatment. As was said, I run Justice Abroad, which is an organization which looks after people in trouble overseas, but I also chair Lawyers for Uyghur Rights. If you'd like to have a look at it, you can go to lawyersforuyghurrights.com. It's a bit of a mouthful. You can have a look at some of the cases we've been bringing and some of the work we're doing. And the aim of that was to bring together lawyers from around the world to look at strategies for countering the oppression of the Uyghur people. Before we start talking about what's happening to them, we should talk a little bit about who they are. They're ethnically Turkish. They've got a unique Central Asian lifestyle. They've got their own language, culture, history, and religion. Most of them are Muslim, not all of them, but most of them are Muslim as well. But a very old and interesting people. And what's happening to them? The campaign against the Uyghur people comprises of eradication of their identity. So we're talking about smashing up cemeteries and mosques, mass arbitrary detention in internment camps, and deaths in those camps as well, torture, forced labor and slavery, mass sterilization, population control, and the interesting thing about what's happening with the Uyghur people and other Turkish minorities there is that at the start, when people started to pick up news about what was happening there in 2017, the Chinese government said there are no camps here, it's being made up, it's all propaganda against China. And then as we've moved along and more evidence has come out, including by some fantastic scholars who found Chinese documents, mass purchase of cattle prods and things like that, which seem to show exactly what's happening there. The line has changed, the government line has changed, and the Chinese say now, oh, there are camps, but these are to educate and train people. And then the question remains, well, why put such big walls around them if they're just there to train and educate people? And then finally, you have people who've escaped from these camps now. So you do have first-hand evidence about what's actually happening within the camps and within prisons there as well. And it's just really horrendous stuff. In regards to numbers as well, the numbers have kind of moved along. And before, when Uyghurs and supporters would say that millions of people are being held in these camps, the Chinese government and some, I have to say, some Western activists would say, well, that's not true. But then recently, the Chinese government admitted to 1.3 million Uyghurs moving through their camp system every year. So that's what we're looking at, the mass repression of Uyghur people. And it goes all throughout society. At Justice Abroad, we have clients from huge businessmen who've been seized and all their assets have been taken, to people who own small shops, so who own a kind of corner shop, people who've worked for the government for years and years. I've got one client, he worked for the forestries for 47 years, the forestry department, he was head of the department, and then he's been arrested. So people from all different backgrounds are being picked up, and there's really no families there who haven't been touched by the crime against humanity and potentially genocide, which is taking place against the Uyghur people. So that's my kind of short answer to the what's happening to the Uyghur people. I think at some point I'll try to play a video that was made for the last presentation I did by one of my clients, where she kind of explains how what's happening has affected her family, because I think that's quite powerful. But I won't play that just now.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you both, Michael and Joe, for actually joining us for this event, and thank you all for attending. I've just been asked quickly by Jaya to introduce Burst the Bubble a bit, as well as also following up with some more questions for both of you. So just quickly, Burst the Bubble UK essentially is a group of youth, all aged 15 to 18 years old. We work across 12 different schools, trying to encourage youth action and awareness on really important topics, such as what's going on with the Uyghurs and the Uyghur genocide. So we've had a campaign recently which we launched, actually called the Free Akbar campaign, which was really successful. It got featured on the front page of Foreign Policy. It was on Japanese television, and people from 16 different countries across the world took part in it. And we released podcasts and videos. We work very closely with many Uyghurs to try and get across their story and raise awareness about what's happening, and actually encourage you to get involved and stand up against what's going on and oppression that they see in the world today. So I wanted to ask you, Joe, actually, Michael just quickly mentioned the eradication of identity that was going on in the region, and he talked about the forced sterilization, forced abortions, etc. So why can't this be classed as a genocide?
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you all of you for attending this evening. That really comes to the heart of why we need this amendment. The amendment is a solution, so let's first look at the problem. Under the Genocide Convention, states have an obligation to prevent and punish genocide. To engage this obligation, you must first recognise genocide. You have to identify it so that you're able to prevent and punish it. So at the heart of Jonathan's question is, why isn't this being recognised as genocide? Internationally, we would expect international courts and tribunals to make that determination. In this instance, and in other various instances, this is not possible. The two main international courts, the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, do not have jurisdiction to hear this case. And I'll consider each court in turn. The International Criminal Court is based on a treaty. You know, its jurisdiction is based on what's considered the Rome Statute. It was set up where states came together, signed the Rome Statute, and the International Criminal Court is based on that. Now, that means its jurisdiction can only be exercised with states who are party to that statute. So, for example, China is not a party to the Rome Statute, and as such, the International Criminal Court cannot hear a case. Now, there are various options whereby the International Criminal Court, you can exercise jurisdiction. One such example is if the UN Security Council makes a referral. Now, China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council and would veto any such referral. So quite simply, the International Criminal Court cannot make a determination of genocide because it does not have the jurisdiction to hear the case. The same can be said for the International Court of Justice. Now, this is the judicial organ to the UN, and to hear that case, you must consent in a contentious case to the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. Again, China would not consent to that jurisdiction. Indeed, if I may, I'll just share my screen because I do have the Genocide Convention to see. Now here, and I'll highlight it for you to see, under Article 9, disputes between the contracting parties related to interpretation, application or fulfilment of the convention shall be submitted to the International Court of Justice. China has what's called a reservation to this. That is to say that they are a signatory to the convention, but they reserve themselves not to bind themselves to the obligation. So China has already expressed that it will not submit itself to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. Now, they are the two main courts whereby you can have that determination made, and they do not have jurisdiction to do that. If international courts are out, the only courts left to make a determination of genocide are domestic courts. Thanks, Jonathan.
Lovely, thank you so much, Joe. And I'm going to pose this question to you first, and then I'll tell Michael what I wanted to ask him as well. So for you, Joe, what was the first amendment? And to you, Michael, what were the objections to that amendment?
Thank you. The First Amendment went through the House of Lords with a handsome majority, but failed at the House of Commons. And what we are seeing now is a revision. But first, what was the First Amendment? At the moment, the UK has a series of bilateral trade agreements. That is to say, we have an agreement with another country. And part of this bilateral agreement ordinarily is for us to trade on preferential terms, no tariffs and so forth. The Genocide Amendment is really the ability to make an application to the High Court in respect of that free trade agreement. So say, for example, I'll use China as an example, even though we don't have a free trade agreement as such with them. Say, for example, we made an application to the High Court. And in that application, you would say, China, we allege China is committing genocide. You would submit evidence to the High Court, and the High Court would have made a determination whether or not that country is perpetrating genocide. If the High Court made that determination, it would then revoke that bilateral trade agreement. That is to say, it would ensure the UK would not be complicit with us trading on preferential terms with a genocidal state. That is the aim of the Genocide Amendment, is to ensure that we do not trade on preferential terms with genocidal states. Now, there are a few key things to note. First, it applies only to bilateral trade agreements. So, for example, if we are part of a multilateral agreement, it is not within the scope of the amendment. It also does not apply to all trade, just preferential terms, so the terms set out in the bilateral trade agreement. Now, this amendment, A, would empower the UK High Court to make a determination, that gets round the barriers I expressed in the previous question, and would ensure that the revocation ensued. And that is the key difference at the moment. But I'll allow Michael now to consider some of those objections.
Thank you, Joe. One of the main objections, and the government seems to be moving their goalposts, and they're actually arguing about this in the House of Lords today. The new amendments being made today, I think it's just finished a few moments ago. But I encourage everyone to go and watch the speeches. I think in all it's about an hour. So if you can put it on the background whilst you're doing something else, it's really good to listen to, though. And some of the speeches were magnificent. Lord Alton's speech was fantastic. There were some really strong speeches there, setting out the history and why it's important that the UK does this at this time when we're becoming, or we're said to be becoming, this kind of global Britain, looking outside and away from our own borders. So go and watch that, because I think that's very important to see. In regards to the main objection in the past, it's hard to kind of keep your hand on the government's objections. And Lord Alton did very well today in calling out the letter which was sent by the government in the House of Lords, which really twisted some of their own objections around. And I'll come to some of those in a moment. The main one was saying, well, the High Court can revoke a trade treaty. So this is against the principle of sovereignty of Parliament and breach of the separation of powers. And in the First Amendment, the High Court did have that power to revoke a treaty. And whether you think that's good or bad, that's kind of a question for yourself. The new amendment doesn't do that. What it does is it requires a motion to be debated in both houses of Parliament, and then Parliament can do what they like, including revoking a treaty. So they do have that option. So that argument about parliamentary sovereignty disappears. But I have to say, it was worrying the first time to see criticism of the courts come up so often from those opposing the amendment, because I think we should be proud and happy to have objective courts who can make decisions in this country. And I think it's really, I think it's anti-conservative, and I think it's it's against all right-thinking people to really attack the courts for no reason. And it does smell a bit like throwing the toys out of the pram, the government having lost a number of cases in regards to the Brexit votes, but still being able to pursue the agenda and get what they wanted in the end. So that was a bit worrying, the criticism of the courts there. But that objection has been dealt with. The current objections, which are kind of flying out of nowhere, as said in the Lords today, were, well, how can our courts aren't competent to do it? How can our courts, how can our courts deal with something as important as genocide? Which I think is a bit of a ridiculous objection, because our courts deal with really complex factual scenarios every day. They deal with the Human Rights Act, the European Convention on Human Rights. They deal with what's torture, freedom of expression. The criminal courts already can decide on genocide. They can decide on torture. They can decide on war crimes, and they've done it in a number of cases. So to kind of pull out that objection and say, well, our courts aren't good enough for it, is really ridiculous. And that point was made quite strongly by Lords from all parties today, saying, don't talk down our courts. Our High Court is perfectly able to look at evidence and come to a factual determination. That would have absolutely no problem with doing that. And the argument that the government has been putting forward the policy for years, that the genocide determination is not something they should do, but it's something for the courts. So for them now to turn around and say, oh, we said the courts, but not those courts, is wrong. It's wrong, and it doesn't really give them much credit to do so. There's no reason why our high courts can't make those decisions. Yes, it would be, we'd love it if our international courts could do the same thing as well. But as Joe set out, they're hamstrung by political consequences of the way they've been set up. So those were the main objections so far that I've been hearing. The one which was put forward by the government in the House of Lords, and this was in a letter, was, well, this could make doing trade difficult, and it could be politically unpopular around the world. And Lord Alton rightly today said, what are you talking about making trade difficult? We're talking about genocide. And he made the point really strongly to say, there is a line where you stop thinking about potentially losing out on some trade, and that line must be genocide, which is the most serious of international crimes. So those were the main objections. I can cover it. If anyone's got any more, I'm happy to cover those as well.
Thank you so much, Michael. My next question is for Joe, and I was wondering if you could outline what the new revised amendment is and how it sort of combats those objections.
Yeah, will do. And I'll also sort of feed in with what Isaac's put into the chat as well. So the revised amendment really took on this concern about parliamentary sovereignty. So at the moment, you still can make the application to the High Court. The High Court can still make that determination. The difference is that there is no revocation. Before, there was automatic revocation if that determination was made. That is not the case under the revised amendment. If the High Court now makes a determination, that is sent up to Parliament. A minister must then lay a motion before both Houses of Parliament, and the government must then set out its course of action. Now, the difference primarily is that this does not bind the government to our course of action. The government could say, yes, we recognise the determination, but we shall carry on as we are. What it would do is force the government to justify why we would continue trading on preferential terms with a genocidal state. So that is the big difference. The one key thing about this amendment that has been consistent and is really the focal point of it is genocide determination in court. And if I may, I'll just pick up on some of the points that Michael has raised, because it's really key. It has been long-standing policy of both Labour and Conservative governments that genocide determination is not a political decision. It's a judicial one. And there are real key reasons why this is. First, imagine a scenario whereby a country alleges that another country has committed genocide. That country that is alleged to be committing genocide will simply say, well, the government's just said that. It's a political thing. They're using it as a political tool. It undermines the credibility of that determination. And genocide fundamentally is a crime. It's a crime under international law. To make that determination requires the application of international law by an independent adjudicator. That is the court. Ian Duncan Smith, at an event I was at last night, put this in really strong and poignant terms. He said Parliament and politicians are a feeble substitute for a court of law. Parliamentarians, politicians cannot act as a court. Only a court is best suited to be independent, impartial, and credible when making that determination and the necessary application of international law. So that is key. It must be a court that makes this determination. But it also addresses the government's concern about parliamentary sovereignty. Judges, as it were, aren't having a say in our trade policy because no action is guaranteed in respect of trade. That is all down to the government and Parliament. So it really addresses the main concern with that. I'll stop there, and Eve and Joe, I'll hand over in case there are particular objections you'd like us to address.
May I just jump in there very quickly? It also, allowing the courts to do it, protects the parliamentarians from accusations of political bias as well. You would remember when Pompeo was made his decision on one of these last days, and they stated that it is genocide. The Chinese authorities criticized them very heavily and said, this is a politically motivated attack. They probably would say the same thing if our High Court did it, to be fair, but they wouldn't really have anything to base it on.
Perfect, thank you. So what I think will be really beneficial is if I run through some of the objections that we haven't covered yet, and if either Joe or Mike would like to respond to that objection and try and equip everyone watching here with the knowledge as to how they can combat that with their own MP. So one objection that we've come across is that genocide determination is for the UN or international courts and tribunals only. How would we respond to our MP if that was their response?
I'm happy to start. So first of all, I've already explained why international courts are not capable in various instances to make this determination. I think fundamentally, when you look at international courts and their jurisdictions, they don't have jurisdictions. There is always some form of limitation or criterion that must be met for both courts to exercise jurisdiction. And on that basis, if we were to delegate genocide determination to what are inherently restricted courts, we are thereby restricting where the application of the Genocide Convention occurs internationally. So it not only is it impossible in certain circumstances, it's also poor practice. And the one thing that I would add is that, say, for example, the UK government delegated genocide determination to, say, the International Criminal Court. Well, when would that determination occur? It would occur after the genocide has occurred. The prosecution of individual perpetrators of genocide can occur years after a genocide has occurred. It's too late to wait for the International Criminal Court for that determination. The UK must be proactive. And really, although we've spoken about the difficulties internationally and in respect of jurisdiction, even if the international court had jurisdiction, it is still prudent for the UK to make a determination for that reason. It would allow us to be proactive. We needn't wait until a genocide has occurred. And really on the point of, I think it was the question on competency of the High Court, Parliament has already declared that UK courts are competent to make determinations of genocide. Further information will be in this briefing, which we can send after this, but under the International Criminal Court Act 2001, as an example, genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, these big key international crimes are crimes under UK domestic law. Now, what does that mean? If a UK national perpetrates one of these crimes, they can be tried in a UK court and therefore a determination made. Now, this has never happened with genocide, but it has happened with other international crimes. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but war crimes and torture are two such international crimes where UK courts have made that determination in a criminal context. Now, although this hasn't happened with genocide, the fact that it's in legislation and it is already a possibility indicates that Parliament has for 20 years shown that they believe the High Court and UK courts to be competent. So the question of High Court competency simply isn't an issue. And for many MPs, they're presenting it as if it's a novel circumstance that Parliament is now having to decide. UK courts can already make a determination of genocide. So to present it as something novel is simply a nonsense. And one quick thing I would add finally is that in much of the Brexit debate and this discussion we're legitimately having about what does a post-Brexit global Britain look like, we spoke about how we didn't want foreign courts or international courts or foreign judges to have an influence over what we do. Why on earth are we devaluing our own courts? Why are we saying that British courts, which many argue, and rightly argue, that are somewhat among the finest in the world, are ill-equipped, are not able to do that? It simply doesn't fit the narrative that the government has been pursuing for months now. So I think when it comes to having those conversations with your MPs, do cite those examples, all of which is in our briefing, so you can read more about it, but do use those arguments as an effective rebuttal.
Perfect, thank you. And there's there's I think two more that I'd like us to touch upon. The first has been mentioned quite a lot by many MPs who have responded, and it has been that this will allow for vexatious claims. And the second is that judges do not want this amendment. And then, sorry to pile it all on you, but if you could touch upon the concession that the government are offering and how I can respond to my MP if they say this is a great thing, this will be better than the amendment.
Can I start with vexatious claims? The High Court deals with claims and vexatious claims every day. So the High Court is well versed in removing claims which don't have a chance of succeeding, which they do a lot. There are lots of cases which come before them. They also have the power to apply consequences if someone keeps on making vexatious claims, and they can even make a prohibited order saying you can't actually, without permission of the court, you can't make another claim. They do all of these things with judicial review cases. So there's no reason they can't deal with that in the context of these determinations. So I don't think that's a very strong argument. So I think they've got the power to do it, and they've got the power to manage it. If I might just quickly take one more of them, in regards to the argument about the new amendment, well, the government's proposed amendment, that would have a special committee looking at whether genocide is taking place. And it's entirely contrary to what they've been saying about it being a judicial determination, genocide. But also, there's committees with power to do this, and a number of the lords asked them to do so in regards to ISIS acts carried out by ISIS, and they failed to do so. So it's not something which will have much effect. It's definitely a lot weaker than what's being proposed in the second Lord Alston's amendment, and it's not something which we should really be supporting. The only reason they've come through with it is they feel that they may lose this amendment vote, and they were so close last time. Six votes the other way would have swung it. And from what you can hear in the Lords, the government is becoming more and more worried about it. If they were smart, they'd come to the table and say, well, actually, maybe we should be supporting this amendment. It's got cross-party support. Lots of really reasonable people from all different parties are supporting it.
Jay, could you remind me what the second one of your objections was?
That judges do not want this amendment.
Yes. So that is, I'll be frank, a bizarre argument to make. First, because it is supported by former Supreme Court judges, a series of QCs. You know, there's a big list in our briefing as well of who actually supports it. If you can perhaps find some judges who may be against it, well done. But frankly, to represent the entire views of the judiciary in such a way is not only, I think, impossible, it's also ill-founded and frankly constitutionally improper. If the government and parliamentarians are to be serious about this amendment, they should consider the amendment on its merits alone, not simply just the views of some judges who may be opposed. When frankly, as I've already said, I think you'd struggle to find many who actually are. The majority are in favour, and for legitimate reasons. As we've already said, there is a deadlock at international courts. Government policies, quite rightly, genocide determination is for courts. If you don't have international courts, what do you have left? Domestic courts. And that sort of leads into sort of the ridiculousness of the government's so-called compromise to have a select committee in some way make this determination and then request a response from government. As Michael said, either the government will ignore the requests, which it has done. You know, this isn't a compromise in the sense that they're saying to a select committee, you can do something new. They're saying to a select committee, you can do something you can already do. And I think really the only people that would have any impact on are those parliamentarians who are simply not aware that this can already be done. And I'd just like to say that, if, for example, the government didn't ignore the request and it did actually reply to the request, you know what its response would be? It's been the long-standing policy of Labour and Conservative governments that genocide determination is not a political decision but a judicial one. And we're back at the starting point where no courts are left to make this determination. The compromise is not a compromise. It's contrary to government policy, and it's been put out there simply to kill off any attempt at UK genocide determination. And that is serious, because if the UK is to be fully engaged and actually mean what it says, when they say never again, do they mean never again? When we say we will engage with our obligations under the Genocide Convention, let's engage with them proactively. Let's not defer our obligations to the UN or international courts. They're our obligations. If we're to meet them, we have to recognise where those flaws are and rectify them. In essence, we have to now stop standing by and take a proactive approach to genocide prevention.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much, Michael, for those really interesting responses. I just recommend to everyone definitely keeping up with the debate. As Michael said earlier, I remember the debate on the House of Commons the first time round. I don't think I've ever seen a group of 17 or 18-year-olds watching debate on parliamentary floor while texting each other on their phones. So it actually is quite surprisingly engaging and really, really interesting, as you've heard. But you actually just touched on this, Joe. And you talked about the government's compromise and sort of its very, very weak impact. Would be able to just expand a bit more in terms of what it actually is, what they were offering, and why it's so sort of futile or nothing?
Yeah, well, the only reason I'm referring to it as a compromise is because that's what the government called it. I think any person who would look at this afresh would not call it a compromise. In essence, what they have said is that, we won't give it to the High Court. We don't want the High Court. But what we will do is we'll allow a select committee, say, for example, the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, to investigate, to raise these concerns of potential genocide with the government and request a response from government. And as Michael said, the government, 9 times out of 10, would ignore the request. They did it with the Yazidis. They did it with the Rohingya. Why on earth would we expect there to be any form of substantial change going forward? And fundamentally, I'd just like to actually raise what Ian Duncan Smith said on this yesterday, and I just so wish it was recorded because it was fantastic the way he put it. Is he said a select committee is not a court. He said that I personally am biased. I would recognise that this is a genocide. Would I be allowed to make that determination knowing that I'm biased? And many parliamentarians would be the same. Indeed, I think there was a very bizarre comment in the debate by one MP who said that it's for parliamentarians to make this determination with the advice of lawyers, right? Surely the basis of that comment is that it requires the application of law. Why would anyone posit parliamentarians and politicians are better suited to make a legal determination than a court? And then in the next breath say the court is not competent. Frankly, it's illogical. It would not make any difference compared to what can happen now, and avoids the main issue. Genocide determination is for courts, it's government policy. Either you accept that or you don't. And frankly, the government is not.
Thank you very much. And I know we've been getting lots of questions in the chat, so I might just go through a couple of those. It's really, really good to see lots of engagement and lots of questions from everyone here. So just randomly, I'll start with a question from Fatima. So she asked, what's the next step? If Genocide Amendment is passed and genocide is determined by the courts, what's sort of going to happen after then?
That's a very interesting question, because under the Genocide Convention, the UK has a number of obligations once something is determined as genocide. There's of course the obligation not to commit genocide, which is Article 1, obligation to prevent genocide. There's an obligation to punish genocide and to assure there are effective penalties for any person found guilty of it, to try people. So there is this general obligation, and no one quite knows how far that makes a state, or how far a state needs to act in regards to that. But they would have a legal determination that genocide has taken place, and they could take that to the international institutions. The United Nations, of course, isn't working very well on this issue because it's very divided. The numbers actually are changing in favor of those people who do recognize what's happening to the Uyghur people as being wrong. The countries slowly seem to be balancing out, but they could take it to all international institutions and say, look, here's legal evidence that genocide is taking place. We must act on this. We can't receive goods from this area. We must sanction everybody who's involved with it. It would make it very difficult for the government, as they currently are, not to add the political leaders from the Xinjiang area to the sanctions list. There's no one's been added in regards to this horrific crime, which is the worst crime which is taking place in the world at this time. No one's been added to that sanctions list. So it would make it very difficult for the government to get away from doing everything possible to punish for what's happening. Some scholars go further and they say genocide determination creates an obligation under the responsibility to protect, to actually go into a country and stop it from happening. That's a debatable concept in international law, but it really shows you how seriously international law takes genocide.
Fantastic. I think I'm going to briefly address one of the questions that has been posed, which is how can students help? And I'll change that to be how can everyone help? Because that's what we're all here for, after all. The first and foremost thing, the most pressing thing that you should do after this call is to email your MP and ask them to back the Genocide Amendment. We will post, and I think, Jaya, if you could just give me a hand and post the link to genocideresponses.org. If you go to genocide.responses.org, which the link will appear for, if you input your postcode, an email will be automatically generated that you can just send off. You can change the email a little bit if you want to personalize it, say anything special, but that will automatically go to your MP. Better still, you can get on the phone and call your MP and express in person or over the phone that you would like them to back the amendment and why. We have now equipped you with a knowledge about this amendment that when they come back to you with excuses and objections, you can challenge them. And we will send you a briefing pack on the amendment, so you can have the information to hand when you're speaking on the phone to them. The best thing you can do to help, and specifically this is great for students because you exist in an organization in a society full of societies, is to work with communities in order to lobby MPs together. Collective action is what makes difference. An individual's vote on their own doesn't really matter to an MP. An entire group's vote, that matters to an MP. Working with religious organizations to get encouraging your local mosque or synagogue or church to lobby the MP together, that can be really effective. The International Bar Association, the Jewish Board of Deputies, the Muslim Council of Britain, they all endorse the previous version of the amendment. I'm sure they'll endorse this one too. So there is a lot of cross-community support for this amendment. And it's about utilising those networks in order to effectively pressure your MP to back this amendment. At the end of the day, they rely on votes in order to get into power, to have their job. So they have to listen to their constituents. So yeah, that is effectively what you can do to help, is really put pressure on your community, put pressure on their MP. So yeah.
I just have one quick thing as well, Eve. If any of you manage to either organise a call, meeting, an actual discussion with your MP, and you want to talk about this in a bit more detail, I keep my DMs open, emails open. I am more than happy to talk to any of you before those calls if you have last minute questions or concerns, or they've already replied to an email and you want to know how to respond. I'm more than happy to support people in that, because the government, as Michael said, moved the goalpost a lot, and you've just got to try and keep up with what can often be very bizarre and desperate arguments, but nonetheless need rebuttal. Eve, is it all right if I just quickly deal with one question on here, because it won't take me long at all?
Of course, go for it.
So the question is from Ella, asking to clarify what type of trade the amendment is attempting to block, and do you think a trade block goes far enough? Okay, so the trade bill amendment is really, really limited and specific. This is the bare minimum we should be doing. And it merely is a bilateral trade agreement. So it's ordinarily trade on preferential terms. So as I said, this can include things like no tariffs, for example. When we engage in these bilateral trade agreements, we do so to benefit both ourselves and that other country. In essence, it is a reward. We should not be rewarding criminal states that perpetrate genocide. That should be the bare minimum. It's as simple as that. It's not all trade, just trade on preferential terms.
May I know I promised to play the video, so I don't want to disappoint anyone. This is one of my clients I'm going to play a video for. So we represent lots of families who've got members who have been disappeared and put in detention on all kinds of spurious charges. Nurse Mangal, she lives in Istanbul, and she escaped from Xinjiang She has a sister whose name is Nursaman, who lives in Washington, and she's a radio journalist. And Nursaman in Istanbul has been pushing the case very strongly in regards to her whole family, 2 brothers and parents who've been taken away, and she hasn't been able to contact them for years. What happened was last week, she was invited to speak in Turkish Parliament by the Turkish opposition IYI party, and she started speaking, but then their Parliament TV cut her off. So she got a standing ovation by those who were there, but no one else could see it. But it created lots of interest in what she was saying. So it actually it worked out quite nicely. And then the next day, a Turkish shock jock politician, his name's Perinçek, who's famous for denying the Armenian genocide. He was actually taken to court in Switzerland for denying the Armenian genocide. He called her a terrorist and a member of ISIS and all kinds of things on TV the next day. But she's been very dignified in her response, and we're looking at potential legal avenues, because that TV clip has been seen all around the world, which would create a very interesting legal case in regards to defamation. But I just wanted to play you a little bit of her speaking, because I think it's important to really understand what we're dealing with. So I'm going to share my screen and play this for you. It is quite short, but I think it's quite powerful. If I can find it.
Hi, my name is Nursaman Abdurrashid, and I am one of the Uyghurs who are desperately seeking justice for their family members who are arbitrarily detained in Chinese concentration camps. I lost contact with my family members since 18th of June 2017. After 3 years, on 15th of June 2020, I learned that all of my family members are in prison. This is my father, Abdurrashid Tohti. He's 55 years old. He's sentenced 16 years, 11 months. She's my mother, Tajigul Qadir. She's 52 years old. She's sentenced 13 years. And this is my elder brother, Ahmetcan Abdurrashid, 34 years old. He's sentenced 7 years. And this gentleman, he's my younger brother. He's 30 years old. He's sentenced 15 years, 11 months. Yes, if you hear me, my beautiful family just torn apart by Chinese regime. They are launching genocide against my people. I just want to say, memorizing Holocaust and genocide not enough. Please stop it. If you really mean never again. Thank you.
So I think it's quite powerful to hear those words, and she's one of hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs whose families have been ripped apart. And I should say that if you're interested in any particular cases, because you want to refer to cases, I'll post in a link in the message box to some of the clients we represent, and you'll see that they come from all kinds of parts of society. You can read about their stories on there as well. If you have a look through, you'll find the cases.
A very interesting question that has just come through, I think Joe or Michael, whoever would like to answer it, is if this is passed, will the courts make a determination on the Uyghur genocide, or will that only be triggered if the government attempts to make a preferential bilateral trade agreement with China?
Okay, so there's a few things that I will say on this, and then Michael, you can probably add to it as well. Is first and foremost, the amendment is a safety net. The EU has just signed a trade deal with China. The government has said repeatedly, quite loud and clear, that it does not propose to seek a bilateral trade agreement with China. That may be possible now. We don't know what future UK governments are going to do. If the EU has just done it, the UK future governments may do it. So it acts as a safety net. This amendment isn't just about the here and now. We could sign a bilateral trade agreement with a country who in 10, 15 years commits genocide. we don't know what will happen in the future. But what we do know is we can put in that safety net, that safeguard now. In respect of China, we do have some bilateral treaties with them. And there is, I think, the potential for an application to be made on that basis. It would, I think, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, it will come down to the interpretation of whether that agreement is a relevant agreement. But nonetheless, an application, I think, would be made. And then if that is the case, the determination will be made that way. Michael, I might ask you just to clarify.
Yeah, no problem at all. No, I think Joe's right there, and the determination probably would kick in as soon as this amendment, as soon as the trade bill has royal assent. So it would actually have an effect. In regards to the government saying, the government's argument won't have an effect, it looks like legally it will because of the way it's been worded in the amendment. But further to that, the government saying we don't have we don't have any intention of entering into a trade agreement with China. They say that, right? But yesterday they sent a letter to all Lords in the House of Lords, which was from the trade minister in the Lords, whose name is Lord Grimstone. And he wrote saying, if we pass this agreement, it will cause problems for us doing international trade. So on one hand, they say we're not. They've said a number of times in Parliament, well, we're not entering into a bilateral trade agreement. On the other side, they're saying, well, if we pass this amendment, it will make it difficult for us to do so. So it does make you a little bit suspicious when those kind of arguments are being put forward as well.
Thank you so much, Michael and Joe. So there's a couple of questions here that I can try and direct people to. So Isaac asked about how they respond to concerns that the High Court does not possess the investigative powers to make a qualified determination. We will be sending a briefing after this. I will be emailing it to all of you. We have a really big section on that. It's got all of the knowledge that you need to have to be able to challenge your MP. So do have a look at that when we email it, and please, like we said, we are here to help, so don't be afraid to just drop us an email or just get into contact with us, DM us or whatever, and we can try and help you further on that.
Yeah, if I just might quickly add something on that point now, because it is, I think it will be a common one people will face, is when it considers the investigative power, it really means the application of international law. As I already indicated, our courts are already competent enough to apply international law, and evidentially it will still be, the burden will still be on the applicant to provide the evidence. At the moment, evidence is already coming forward to the Uyghur Tribunal, so that there are vast amounts of evidence which can be put forward. The High Court will be competent on that basis. At the moment, it can do so in a criminal context, and that's the highest standard of proof. In this context, the government would have to clarify what the burden would be, and it can do that through statutory instrument, which is all part of the amendment. But certainly it does have that capability already, and it would just merely need to be applied.
Perfect, thank you. Flo, you have asked that you've tried to email Ring Your MP, but they've asked you to wait, which could take up to 10 days. Should I keep ringing? So I think you might have emailed me already. I can't remember. I think I saw this a couple of hours ago or so, but if you email me again after, I will reply to that email, and what I'll try and do is I'll try and help you directly with that, with your MP. So we'll run through something that we can try to figure out, and also see if there's anywhere, anyone else I can kind of place you with in your constituency to apply a bit more pressure, so I can help you with that directly. And we have a few more questions. Ruth has asked us too, so I'll ask you and Michael both of them together. Joe, I know the legal definition of genocide, but what is the political definition of genocide, and how can individuals use their responsibility to protect towards calling out genocide?
I'm happy to take the first one, then Michael, if you want to take the second one. There is no political definition of genocide. There is only the legal definition of genocide. The question is, who makes that decision? In this case, government policy has been it is for courts to make that decision, and this amendment complies with that. Is that clear? Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. And we have another question from Anders sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Considering the effort that the government have put in to stop the amendment from going through, should the worst happen and the amendment fails to pass, what would be the next steps to fight in the fight for justice?
That's a very good question, and I think I'm more hopeful this time after watching the speeches in the Lords and knowing all the background lobbying which is being done. I'm very hopeful that this amendment will pass. If it doesn't pass, then this issue is not going away. There are a number of other bills which need to be passed by Parliament because of us leaving the European Union, and every time a bill goes through, the question is going to be, can a determination of genocide be attached to that bill? So it's not a question which will disappear. It's something which will come back again and again.
And Michael, just to ask you, sorry, Ruth Barnett's second question, which was how can individuals use their responsibility to protect towards calling out genocide?
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, the responsibility to protect came about from after the Genocide Convention. So there was a United Nations Security Council resolution 1674, which said regarding responsibility to protect populations from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. And then there were a number of different reports afterwards emphasizing that there is a responsibility to protect. Responsibility to protect has been used to justify military intervention in places like Rwanda and Kosovo, and so states do seem to take it relatively seriously, not in all cases, unfortunately. But there are two schools of thoughts in regards to the responsibility to protect. The first one is non-interventionist, saying that there's no legal duty to actually intervene, and then the second is a more interventionist school, saying that there is a duty to intervene once genocide has been determined. So there's really those divergent views of international law. But it seems like the interventionist school is gaining more support because of the terrible effects when we don't actually don't stop these terrible atrocities from happening. So there are those two kind of arguments about it. It is, of course, difficult when you're dealing with a country which is as militarily powerful and politically powerful as the People's Republic of China. It's not an easy thing to do. But at the moment, and this comes down to really the obligations of the Genocide Convention, if the court says genocide is taking place, then there's a legal obligation not to reward people for committing genocide. So we need to stop all activities which are helping or assisting a country which is committing genocide. And there are also a point which hasn't been made today, but very strong international reasons. Other countries may follow suit. And in international law, as the United Nations becomes less useful because of countries blocking actions, especially in things like what's going on in Xinjiang, the other countries make agreements. So lots of countries are acting outside of the United Nations system. So it's quite possible that if a genocide determination is made by the English courts or the Scottish courts or Northern Irish courts for genocide, that international institutions, whether they're NATO, G7, will take steps together. And recently, when Belarusian leaders were added to the sanctions list in the UK, that was done in tandem with Canada. It was done at exactly the same time. So there are options for acting with other countries, but not through the United Nations.
Great, thank you, Michael. And I have one more question from Matthias, which is, to anticipate a possible point, what would be the negative effects for international tribunals being bypassed by courts in member states, and how can we respond to this?
In regards to international criminal law, so lots of people get a bit mixed up in regards to international law. You've got international criminal law, which looks at individual responsibility, and then you've got public international law, which looks at your state responsibility as well, but not really on a criminal basis. But in regards to international criminal law, the main principle of international criminal law is complementarity. It's actually meant to be the states who prosecute people for international crimes, not the international courts. And it's only if the states don't act that the international courts take over. And there are lots of cases in regards to that, in regards to Libya, where they discuss whether a country is properly prosecuting an offender. So the general principle, at least in international criminal law, is that it's for the states to act first. It's not something which should be left to international tribunals. Joe perfectly explained before the problems of state responsibility in the International Court of Justice, because you've got China has not agreed to be bound by the International Court of Justice in regards to genocide. So you have that problem. You have that problem there. But the general principle is that domestic courts should be doing these things. And if the UK has an obligation under the Genocide Convention not to reward countries who are taking part in genocide, then it really is our obligation to check. It's not good enough just to close our eyes to genocide happening and say, oh, we didn't know it's happening. So I think for our obligation under the Genocide Convention, it's very important that there's a domestic court in the United Kingdom making that determination.
So I'm very conscious of the time, so I think we're going to wrap it up in a second. But as Eloise has just posted in the chat, the amendment just passed through the Lords, 359 votes to 188, which we are very, very pleased to hear. You know, it's on. Contact your MP because it's on. Really quickly before we end, just to let everyone know, I know lots of you here are involved with Students for Uyghurs already, and thank you very much for that. But Students for Uyghurs are recruiting student ambassadors at universities around the country. So if you are interested in getting involved in that, please do drop me an email or message me on socials or contact Jaya, because we would absolutely love to hear from everyone. And I would love to thank Michael and Joe for joining us this evening. It's been a super informative and very interesting event. And I would like to wish everyone a lovely evening. And
in about what's happening on Thursday. So on Thursday, Ruth, who is here today, and Dory Oliver Wolf, both are Holocaust survivors, and they recorded messages to MPs. On Thursday at 10 AM, throughout the whole day, they're already on our Twitter. We will be sharing those videos, and we would like each and every one of you to do the same. Either share it on any social media you have, share it with family, share it with friends, but most importantly, share it with MPs. We're hoping if we can have it on Thursday as a targeted day, we can get mass sharing of this and more people will see it at once. So please, Kirsty, just put the link on the chat box. They'll be on a Twitter at Yet Again UK, and you can find all the videos on there.
Yes, thanks, Joe. Everyone, please do share that. That would be fantastic. Like, especially in the current, moment when everyone's trapped indoors, when all the political discourse is happening online, it's so imperative that we, can get things trending. And we managed to get the Genocide Amendment trending last time for the last vote, but we'd love to have even more activity this time. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and have a lovely evening and good night.